Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. This week on the show, we are continuing our new series diving into the habits, mindsets, methods, and routines of the best deer hunters in the world. And today, we're joined by Ben Rising.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your guide to the Whitetail Woods. Presented by First Light, creating proven, versatile hunting apparel for the stand, saddle, or blind. First Light. Go farther, stay longer. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
All right, welcome back to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by First Light and their Camo for Conservation initiative. And we are back for round 2 of this Mindsets of the Whitetail Masters series. So as I mentioned last week, when we kicked this off with John Eberhart, the idea here is to get a look behind the scenes, kind of look behind the curtains, look under the hood, understand what's going on in the minds of the best deer hunters. Not necessarily what their favorite tactics are, not necessarily what they think about certain aspects of deer behavior or deer sign or how they shoot their bow, whatever it is. I want to know how they do all those things from the beginning. Like, what are the ways they think through challenging things? How do they solve problems? What are the habits that are important for them? What's their work ethic look for? What does their mental toughness comprise of? Those are the kinds of things that I'm interested in getting into. I want to understand the gears. I want to understand the machinery inside the V8 engine that powers these guys to be such incredible deer hunters. That's what we're trying to do in this series. And I've done this with a series of 20 questions that I'm asking every one of these different elite deer hunters, running them through the same questions so that we can then compare all of these different folks, see what they have in common, see where there might be some unique aspects, and then what each and every one of us can learn from all of that. So that's the plan for today's episode. As I mentioned, our guest is Ben Rising. He has been a frequent guest on the podcast, and he's well known within the world of whitetail hunters. He first came, I think, to notoriety through his time with Drury Outdoors. More recently, his own show called Whitetail Edge has continued to showcase his incredible knack for finding, targeting, and putting tags on giant old whitetail deer. He's one of the best out there. He hails from Ohio but hunts all over the country, and he's one of those guys who is laser focused on his goals. And you're going to understand, I think, a little bit more about how he does that and why he does that after listening to our conversation today. Now, I just want to give you one heads up before we get to that. As of this podcast launch, this one will be coming out, July 11th, I think, Thursday the 11th of 2024. If you are listening on that date, we will have a brand new whitetail video series from me and Tony Peterson available for you to watch. It is a educational, kind of foundational video series, walking through the very most important elements to make sure that you can fully take advantage of the really in-depth detail things that we cover here on the podcast. So we've got new videos coming up that break down the importance of, really understanding how you read tracks, or really understanding rubs, or really understanding scrapes, getting into the minutia of what deer eat, when they eat it, how to determine what deer are eating what, right now. These are the kind of things that sometimes in these podcasts we just gloss right over. We just assume that everybody has the same basic understanding as Tony and I do. But what we find out over and over and over again is that that is not necessarily the case. So we wanted to provide that baseline resource for everybody. You watch these videos, you'll be caught up to speed. You can listen to the rest of the podcast. Or if you already feel like these things are, well known by yourself, pass them on to your buddies who are earlier in their hunting journey. Pass these on to new hunters. Have your kids watch them, whatever it might be. We're hoping these can be really helpful resources. The show is called Whitetail EDU, and you can find it over at the MeatEater Clips YouTube channel. That's MeatEater Clips, CLIPS. So if you go to YouTube, search for that, you'll find it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like that video. Make sure you pass it on to your friends and family. That'll keep me and Tony employed by MeatEater and keeping us able to produce these podcasts for you. So thank you in advance for doing that. And enough from me. I think we should just get to my chat with Ben Rising here in the second episode of our Mindsets of the Whitetail Masters series. Enjoy. All right, with me now on the show, back for, I don't know, maybe the third or fourth time, something like that. We
Yeah,
got
I think
Ben
it's
Rising.
possibly fourth.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I love being on this podcast. Yep, it's always good.
We've had a lot of good chats over the years, and today I wanted to take things in a different direction. I know we've chatted in the past about how you target specific bucks. I know we've talked about breaking down all of your scouting habits. We've talked about, how you think about how big old bucks think and how you think like them, and a lot of tactical strategic things. But we're kicking off the series this month, Ben, in which I'm trying to kind of look under the hood, you might say, kind of get behind the scenes into the minds of people like you who are just very, very consistently successful. What makes that kind of person tick? What are the little
Gotcha.
things they do? What are the little things that are different about how you think than how other people think? That's the kind of stuff we're going for with this one. So I've got a list of about 20 questions here, Ben, that I've been asking a number of different people, the best of the best whitetail hunters, and walking through the same set of questions about these mindsets, about your thought process, that kind of stuff. And so that's what I'm looking
Okay.
for here is kind of the why behind some of this stuff. So that's the high level plan. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I like
All right.
different.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna get here with this one. So to start, we're gonna jump right into the deep end with something that's a little bit it could be a big open-ended question, or it might be very simple, I guess. And what I want to know is, Ben, how do you personally define deer hunting success?
Well, okay. So I guess I would have to answer that in a sense of um, some of that could be depending on where I'm at, where I'm hunting. Does that make sense? You
Mm-hmm.
know, if I'm in, and I don't think anybody sets any standards higher for them, for me than I do myself, if that makes sense. So, but I'm also, I guess, aware of the fact that depending on where I'm hunting and what I'm doing also determines what my success rate should be or what I can consider a successful hunt, whether it even involves a harvest or not. But, um, if I'm hunting something like that's, in my home state where I have a lot of access to it, can, do a lot of scouting, things like that, have history with deer. Well, I always feel like if I don't kill that deer that I'm after, then I'm not successful, without a doubt.
Yeah,
Um, I'm used to putting a tag on something that I'm after. Um, if I'm out of state or on a very new piece of property and somewhere that I've never hunted and I only have a few days to hunt, success can be in different levels there to me. Whether I harvest a nice buck or I just had a great time and I learned a lot, something that I can imply for the next season. Did I see a lot of deer? If I'm not seeing anything or putting myself in the roundhouse of at least things that, then I don't consider that successful. I feel like I've been doing this long enough that, you should be able to drop me out of an airplane about anywhere and I should be able to come close to getting it done, you
yeah.
know, on a decent deer.
So what about the flip side? How would you define deer hunting failure?
Um, Not seeing the forest for the trees,
Hmm,
so to speak, like not taking the fun out of it, not enjoying it, which can happen very easily in today's age. I feel for people, and I
for
feel
sure.
it's only gotten worse with social media and things because I feel like um, everybody's so worried about getting their picture on the gram with a big buck and and I'm guilty of it too, in a sense of like, cause this is part of my living, I mean, I'm a timber guy by trade, logging. That's what I do every day, buying timber, moving logging crews around, cruising timber, things like that. But, whitetail edge has become so much a bigger part of my living than I ever expected it to be. So success has to happen in order for your fan base to keep wanting to follow an old man. As I age, I'm not 25 anymore like I was with the juries.
Yeah.
I'll be 50 here in a couple weeks. And, so I do feel like I even feel that pressure because a lot of people, and please, I say this humbly, people have come to expect Ben Rising to shoot really big deer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, for sure.
So that puts a lot of pressure on myself. I feel like if I'm not producing those results, I'm sometimes failing. But sometimes I won't settle either. Like I don't want to shoot what I call TV deer. Like just to put a tag on something and have a show, or like, so I have footage for a kill episode. I would rather eat my tag than lower my standards of what I try to preach to people that I stand for, or what I'm trying to do. Does it mean that I feel people are failing if they're shooting smaller deer? No, it's all up to you. Whatever makes you happy. I've just killed so many deer in my time that for me, I get nothing out of shooting, 125-inch deer, if that makes sense. Or now,
100%.
if I was in a hillside in the middle of West Virginia on a mountainside or PA and I shot 125, 130-inch 4-year-old buck, I'd be ecstatic.
Yeah.
So it's all relative to where we're at. But failure for me too is like I was saying, like if we get to a point where we're taking the hunting out of hunting, that's a failure. If we're taking the enjoyment out of it, if you're being driven to hunt more by wanting to show off what you've killed than the experience, then I feel we're failing, or I feel I've failed if I let that get in my way.
Mm-hmm. Is there any past failure of yours that you could look back on and say that it really sets you up for success in the future? Like, do you have a favorite failure that you can point back to as like, man, that that mistake or that year or that hunt that I really screwed up, man, that was a turning point for me, or that was a great lesson learned? Does anything come to mind like that?
Oh yeah. Biggest deer in my life. Biggest deer I'll ever see in my entire life.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
What happened?
And I was young. I was filming for the juries. I was in Illinois. And it's part of the reason why I fell in love with Illinois but we're talking 2004, I think. And we were hunting a property that was pretty legendary as far as just the kind of deer that had been seen on it over the years. And, this is now, granted, it wasn't a managed piece of property at all. Like, this was an outfitter that had this ground, and he just let me basically do my own thing. I got to hang my own stands. He just gave me a part of the farm to hunt, but the farm was really known for having really big, gnarly, mature, hill country whitetails in Illinois, and had little tiny bean fields or corn fields up on the tops, very steep ridges, creek bottoms, swamp, had a lake on it. It was just an epic piece of ground. It ended up selling later on. Actually, it ended up selling the next year after this hunt took place. But long story short, when it comes to calling deer, this deer taught me so much. Like, the failure of this deer has probably been the death of 20 cents, if that makes sense.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what happened with that?
So like, it was early November. We had hiked way into this secluded field. This was before I was running trail cams out of state. I had no idea what was on this property. I was just hunting sign, just hunting deer, hunting for a mature buck. We didn't know what we were going to see. And honestly, a lot of times those are some of the best. Cause like, you just like, very seldom, Mark, anymore do I see a deer I don't know.
Yeah.
And honestly, that kind of sucks sometimes. You know what I mean?
I do.
Because it's like, oh, that's so-and-so, or that's,
that
and even hunting
surprise.
Yeah. Even hunting public land or like private land that I run cameras on, I typically know what I'm probably going to see. But anyways, we're sitting there, we're hunting. We'd set up just inside from this bean field, and I wanted to set up in a situation where I could see, because I was going to rely on calling to really be a big factor. I was set up close to some good trails, but I wanted to set myself in a situation where I feel like I could, take advantage of seeing a deer maybe cross the field, or, maybe call to it, get it to come to me. So again, we're talking 20 years ago at this point. I was still a young guy, still learning. I was a pretty good killing at that point. Had got quite a few successful hunts on tape already for Drury's. But I wasn't prepared for what was to happen that day. I mean, we're sitting there, and we'd seen a few does come out through the field and was milling around, and kind of went back in a little buck or two. And then all of a sudden, I just happened to look up across this field, and it was about probably 200 yards across the field, maybe. And I can just see this deer standing there, looking straight out into the field, just bigger than life, just standing there. I don't even know where he came from. All of a sudden, it was just this beautiful buck is standing there. And as I'm looking at him, and he turns his head, the tree that I thought he was standing by moved. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is this flipping rack. And I couldn't,
Oh, no.
to this day, I've never seen a deer like this. And it was a weird deer. It was like, it wasn't one of the deer that do this. It was one of those deer that did this straight, like just kind of go out.
Oh, man.
And I mean, he was, he was so heavy, like it was insane. And he just had stuff everywhere. Like, knowing what I know now, this deer was 250, 260, 270.
Jeez.
Just an absolute freak of a deer. And I'm just blown away looking at this deer, but he's over there and he makes a scrape. And the problem was, we really couldn't even get him on camera because he was kind of far enough, and the guy running the camera really couldn't see him good. And he's kind of freaking out. And he was, back in those days, we didn't have great cameras and great whatever. But anyways, so I start calling to this deer, to where what I should have done was just been like, let's just see what he's going to do. Like he was going to work a scrape. I felt like he was just going to go back in the timber. And I think that's why I started to get a little antsy. But I start kind of laying it on this deer, and I wasn't paying attention to his body language.
Yeah.
Which is what I talk a lot about now that I've learned. And, he basically was telling me, I'm not interested, or I'm a little bit spooked by what you're doing. And I just kept putting the pressure on this deer, and he just finally just tucked back into the timber, and I'm like, daggone it, and I'm upset. And, he kind of had wagged his tail a few times, which tells you he knows you're there. Like when I first did a small rattling sequence and grunted a few times, he wagged his tail and he kind of looked and he was interested. For all I know, he had a hot doe behind him in the woods that he may have never left. I just don't know. But if I'd have known what that meant at the time, I would have just backed off. That he heard me, like he's saying, okay, I got you. I can hear that. I'm comfortable. But no, I kept putting the heat on, and it kind of made him, he just went into the timber. Well, here I'm thinking, okay, it's completely over. I just totally screwed this up, and I'm mad, and it just kind of took me out of my mind frame. And I'm sitting there in the stand, and like 20 minutes later, even, I finally, like, my camera guy's behind me. He's looking into the woods, so I'm thinking everything's fine, but he's kind of looking a different direction. I'm watching the field, keep glassing, thinking maybe this deer's just going to pop out and show up, or I'll get lucky, and I finally get frustrated, and I just kind of stand up, and I say to my camera, I just can't believe I did that. And I hear,
oh no.
And I turn, and that deer is in the woods, sneaking in from behind us. He's at 25 steps. And he was sneaking in, trying to get downwind of us. And when I stood up and started, he caught me, and I had no idea he was there, but he was coming. And I mean, I'll never forget it. Like, obviously I didn't get him.
Brutal.
Yeah, we didn't get it on film, nothing. Cause Pete, by the time Pete turned and, it was over. All you saw was King Kong sneaking, and he didn't even bolt. Like, he literally just walked out of there like, I knew it. Like, he was doing it to just prove that he knew what was going on.
So there's a lesson there about reading a deer's body language and not overdoing it. But then there's also a lesson there about,
never
not
taking
giving up.
yourself out of the game.
Yeah.
Never let your mental state take you out of the game, especially with big whitetails, especially if you've seen one.
Man. And that's so hard to actually do because it's such a mental roller coaster throughout any given day and week or season, right?
Yeah, and we had hunted really hard leading up to that, so it was making it even more deflating that, like, we didn't get a chance when I first tried calling to the deer, but that deer taught me so much about what big bucks can do. And so I've literally altered my setups to make sure deer can't get downwind of me, always be on alert that one may be sneaking in from a different direction, listening, looking for body language of how they're reacting to when you grunt to them or rattle or anything. If I could fast forward to today and that deer did the same thing, he'd probably die. So it's just, if anything, I should have just let him be, and maybe I could have made a move on the deer. You know what I mean? And I ended up killing a really good deer the next day because I did try to move, thinking, well, maybe he'd just go back to that area. And, we hunted a little different field the next ridge over, thinking maybe he'd do something different. But I ended up killing a really nice buck the next day, a big mature deer, but it wasn't that deer.
Well, that is a great failure. If you have to fail bad, at least fail on one you can learn a lot from.
Yeah. Just don't fail on one so big. Biggest deer I'll ever probably see in my life in the wild.
Man. All right. Shifting gears. That was a perfect story, by the way. That was a very good example. I'm looking for another example here, but instead of a deer, I'm looking for a person. Can you name one other whitetail hunter that you view as truly elite, like a really, truly masterful whitetail hunter? Can you name for me one person who you look to like that, and describe for me what you believe is their key to success? Like, what is the thing about them that makes them so good at this?
Well, I'm trying to, there's different names that come to mind. I've not spent a lot of time, honestly, like with what I consider other real whitetail killers. Like, I've just never spent a lot of time in the woods with somebody like that or been around them a lot. Like, I know some just normal guys that every year kill really good deer, but if I had to say a name that, like, I think a lot of people know, when it comes to, harvesting mature deer and, really good deer, without a doubt, Mark Drury is one of those guys that, I mean, and the hard part for people to understand today is that they forget where Mark came from. Mark hasn't always hunted out of box blinds. He hasn't always, had managed farms. He hasn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, neither has Michael Waddell or Terry or a lot of these guys. Like, they grew up hunting just like normal people, and they just became famous from their success and over time. But they were deer killers. You know what I mean? Steve Stoltz, another one. Don Kiske, same thing. Lee Lukoski. I mean, and I know there's just a lot of people now that they always say, well, if I could hunt how they do, I could kill those bucks too, or they're hunting zoos, or, which, and none of those guys are going to sit there and tell you they're not hunting great ground now. But they didn't always hunt like that. To make this video and hunting industry, what we have made it and what it's come into. I mean, I've been doing this 25 years. You know, back when we were filming on tapes and, you know, it was VCR tapes that were the productions that come out, you know? So like to get the hunting industry where it has come though, like it wasn't always on this kind of dirt. Like these guys were hunting public. They were, some of the older jury tapes are just those things. Weren't killing always giant deer, but always having success. But what Mark is really good at is being very analytical and piecing together things of like, just that's why that's how DeerCast came about, and all these things of years of them keeping notes of what they noticed, like with moon phases and cold fronts, and like they've taught us all a lot of these different things that maybe a lot of us wouldn't have caught.
Yeah.
Like, you know, your average whitetail hunter doesn't pay attention to a lot of that kind of stuff. You know, I picked up on a lot of things early in life on things like that, but I do believe it helped me being around people like Mark and Terry and people like Lee, talking to Lee Lakosky once in a while. And we're going back to the days before any of us was any super famous at all, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And bouncing things off people. And, you know, what I was just really ultra good at was picking a certain deer out and grinding so hard on that deer that I just would never let up on him. Like, you know, a lot of times, I killed him in the first or second sit, third sit. But sometimes I'd have to grind and hunt one like a tick on a deer's back. But Mark and them are just very good at those kinds of things, of picking Mother Nature apart and figuring out what deer are going to do and move. You know, Andre DeQuisto is another one. You know, very methodical at hunting deer in tight cover in their beds. And, you know, that's an art form. You know, I've never hunted with Andre, but, you know, the guy has killed numerous really big deer in those kinds of situations. Just a killer, you know. I just would have to say, you know, the list can be long. You know, there's people I don't know, but I've heard names of. But there was a guy years ago when I was a kid that I really looked up to. His name was Ron Osborne, and you'll have to look it up on the internet. Look up the Ron Osborne buck. It's like a baby hole in the horn. And it was killed in Mahoning County, Ohio, back in the 80s. And then he killed a giant 6-point like the next year. But this was back in the days when Miles Keller's face was on the bottles of Scent Shield and things like that. Like I'm talking mid 80s. And so, you know, just very cool. Miles Keller killed a lot of big deer, but Ron Osborne was a guy that really had it figured out of hunting big deer on fence lines, you know, on field edges or close to swamps and pin oak woods. And I actually talked to this guy one time on a logging job. I was like 17 years old, and was working the log landing that day. I'd come out from cutting timber in the woods, and here I was cutting right next to where he had just killed this big deer a couple years earlier. And I didn't, or, you know, like 8 years earlier. And I was just a young guy working for this timber company at the time. But when he come driving up on his four-wheeler, I recognized him. And I was like, "You're Ron Osborne." And he was just kind of like taken back that I even knew who he was. And, you know, and I remember telling him, I was like, "Someday I'm going to kill big deer like you do." You know, and he was just like, "I hope you do." But, you know, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that quite answered your question, but.
I think you point to a lot of good examples there. People who are very detail oriented, people who pay attention to the little things and get the little things right. That's important stuff.
I think Jay Gregory is another one. Jay, somebody I forgot to mention. But here's the other thing about that equation too, is these guys not are only good at what they're at doing that, but they're killers. You know, they can kill when the time comes.
Can handle that moment. Yeah.
They can handle that moment. And that is really important.
Easier said than done too. So speaking of these little things, what is one single change or choice that you made over the course of your deer hunting life that you think has made the most meaningful impact for you, from taking you to like an okay deer hunter to a great deer hunter? Like, can you think of, Was there any inflection point? Was there any moment or any time when you changed this thing or realized this thing, and all of a sudden it was like your eyes opening to this whole new world, and that changed your success in a big way moving forward? Can you think of anything like that?
I would say probably my first experience of killing my very first Boone and Crockett class whitetail, or like granted, I killed, it was Pope and Young. I mean, and I don't have any of my deer officially scored. None of my deer entered in the books, but this deer grossed 184 inches. It was a 9-point that I'd killed years ago on Whitetail Madness 6. But that deer was probably, once I got that taste of that size of a deer, there was no turning back. And I learned a lot from that deer by scouting him and watching him and just different things. And I learned a little bit about cold fronts more and was putting some of those things together. Bedding areas, scrapes, how a big buck works. Because after I killed that deer, then I dove right in to where he was at. And I learned as much about that deer as I could learn. I learned about his bedding area, like where he was always at, what it looked like. I laid in his beds. I sat in his beds, and I just tried to just pick everything apart that I could pick apart and learn from it. And that deer probably set me on the course of, looking at big bucks from a deer's eyes, or like hunting big deer, trying to think like a big deer.
Is that something you still do to this day? When you kill a big deer, do you try to then dive right in there the next day or soon after and go in there and look at all the sign, knowing like, oh man, it was that deer, and drilling into stuff like that? Is that something that still pays dividends these days?
It just depends if I have the time, because like now, typically the problem is I have multiple tags, and when things are hot, I'm typically rolling to I do what I got to do. We film what we have to film, take care of the deer, do all that. So I typically don't have time to like instantly go in and do it anymore. Unless I'm in that situation where I can, then I will, because I do like to learn. But I always typically end up going back during shed season or whatever and really kind of investigate to see what I thought that deer was doing, if I was right or not,
Yeah.
But then there's sometimes, you kill big bucks that like you're just calling deer. You don't even know where that deer came from. So, obviously in that situation you wouldn't,
Yeah, not always possible, but does seem like a good, in those situations where it makes sense. What a great kind of way to, kind of get inside the book, read the inside pages of the book, if you will, and
Yeah,
understand the
absolutely.
why behind a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I love that. Okay, shifting gears. We just kind of talked about something in your past or a past experience that really changed things for you long ago in that case. I'm curious now about something that's happened more recently. Can you think of anything in the last 5 years? Any new belief, a new habit you've picked up, a new tactic that you recently, stumbled upon, or something was shared with you that has dramatically improved your hunting? Is there anything in the last 5 years that stands out as one of those recent like game changers for you?
Probably more like the last 6 years, maybe 7, more like 6. It's mock scrapes.
Hmm.
Yeah, hunting scrapes. Black Widow deer lures, and this is not a plug for me because they're a sponsor, but at first I got with them because they wanted to sponsor me because I was starting my show, and it was just a very small sponsorship, but it gave me the opportunity to really try it and put the lures to work and learn. It made me dive more into like the true details of hunting scrapes and how bucks use them and react to them. And so that has definitely been probably one of those things that have helped me trick some really big deer close to bedding, you know. And we have video footage of some of that, like, a deer hunt we called Splits a couple years ago in Ohio. I mean, I've just killed, a lot of big deer around those scrape areas. and certain types of scrapes. So that's probably been the biggest thing. And I've learned a lot about deer lure because, I grew up trapping and lure was important. Fresh lure was important. Well, it's the same with deer hunting. True, real, fresh deer lure is very important compared to dark looking bottles of deer pee or urine that have been sitting on a Walmart shelf for months, or years even. Like, it's just not even the same. So
what's the Cliff Notes version of a setup with a mock scrape that you intend to hunt? Like, how specifically are you setting up your stand location in relation to the mock scrape, and how are you creating that mock scrape for a kill set like that?
Yeah, well, so a lot of times what I consider a mock scrape eventually becomes a real scrape.
Yeah.
Like, I will start making visual signs for scrapes even as, early as now, or July, August, taking a MeatEater and opening up a spot where I want that scrape to be, if it's on the edge of a field or whatever. But most of the scrapes that I feel like that I can really truly harvest a deer on, like if it's a particular buck and I kind of know where he's at, I want to try to set up a scrape or two that's in between his bed and where he's eventually trying to go that evening, if that makes sense. So, it's convenient for him to hit it, or, whatever. Sometimes I'll set one up in an area where there's does, doe bedding area. And I know those bucks are going to be using certain trails to get to that doe bedding area. And I want to stage him up before he goes downwind of it or whatever he's going to do. So that's kind of what I look for. Most of the times those kind of scrapes are a little bit in the timber. They're not exactly out on the edge. Now, I do make mock scrapes depending on like tree lines and, edge cover, like catching deer going from whatever, or like a deer's coming into the edge of a food plot to, check for does on an early October cold front. But a scrape on the edge of a place like that is money, because they are going to hit that scrape every time before they even go about their business. They're going to hit it.
Yeah.
Before they even start feeding.
Yeah. You mentioned a change you made there with a piece of, like, I don't know, I guess you could call the lure a bit of equipment. But what's just a tactic or a habit or a practice that you have? So a habit or a practice that you have that others find absurd, but you believe truly makes you a better deer hunter. So what's one unusual habit or practice that most folks think's crazy that you believe truly helps you?
Well, this might get a little off the beaten path, but I will tell you an experience that I've started to do, and it's worked. I guess I don't know if it's worked or it's just, and you might even think this is a little nuts, but so the deer I killed last year, I killed a deer called Ranger. He's 215-inch gross buck.
Giant.
Yeah, and I shouldn't say I passed the deer the year before, because I didn't really like have him within shooting distance. Like, I had one shot one day at 60 yards, but that day I saw that deer, I realized I don't think this deer is what he can be yet. And I took a huge gamble. I mean, like a monster gamble, because the neighbors were all over this deer. This wasn't a very big piece of property that I was hunting him on. Literally guys hunting each side of the property, which is only 400 yard wide. So 200 yards each way from the center of the property, there's tree stands. I took a gamble by not hunting this deer and like putting more pressure on him and trying to get him killed. Once I realized that I really thought he had another year, like I felt like he could do better, be more. And so when I did that and I gave that up, it was hard to back off, because the deer was mid 80s at that point, pretty easy, probably pushing 90.
Yikes. And
I literally prayed about it. I mean, I did. Like, I didn't pray for the deer, but I said, Lord, I was like, I want to shoot this deer. Like, I'm taking a chance, but I don't think he's ready, and I'm going to back off. And I just know that, like, if it's meant for me to kill this deer next year, you're gonna protect him, and I'll get a chance at him. Like, I'm gonna honor you in this situation, and I'm gonna trust you that if this is what's meant to be, I'm gonna back off and I'll kill him the next year. And I killed him October 7th of the following year. So on a cold front that was unexpected, I wasn't planning to go hunt. I ended up taking the chance. I had sprinklings of intel of that deer. It wasn't like he was just all over me. Like, I just had sprinklings that he was around, and I went with my gut. And on day 4, I whacked him. And it was just a very humbling, eye-opening experience of, like, because, not everybody believes in God. I understand that or whatever, but I truly believe that, like, real hunters have a connection, and they know that this isn't all by an explosion or like Mother Nature is. There's a connection of what God has given us to enjoy here. But, and I've been in other situations tracking deer where I've truly went to the Lord and been like, dude, I need some help. Like, I didn't make a good shot. It's my fault. But I don't want this deer to go to waste. I'll honor you. I mean, I've told a story about that with a deer Roman that I shot bad a couple years ago. Gut shot him really bad back, guts hanging out, but I knew he wouldn't go far, but he didn't bleed at all. Like, I couldn't find any blood, hardly, just little specks. And he was headed towards the neighbors in a really thick hill country area. And I knew they wouldn't be fond of me going to get the deer. And like, finally I sat down on a stump after tracking him. I went 75 yards and it took me an hour and a half. That's how slow I was going, looking for every little tiny. And I had scanned this whole hillside with my binoculars. I couldn't see him. And literally I could see the property line. And I just sat down and I'm like, I just went to the Lord and I was like, Lord, I need your help. Like, I'm at a loss. Like, I don't think I'm going to find this deer the way it's going. Like, he's either going to be on our property, and we both know what that's going to lead to. And I was like, man, I really could use your help if you could, and I promise I'll tell this story. If you help me find this deer, how I prayed to you about it. And, I just really humbled myself before him. And Mark, I'm not kidding you. I stood up off that stump, took 3 steps, and that deer was at 40 yards.
Wow.
Laying beside a tree. And I had looked, I had glassed that spot. I'm pretty sure I should have seen the deer. Now, I'm not saying that, like he just, but something divine happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never felt like, it sent chills through my body. I mean, I cried, like literally had tears. And I mean, I just got emotional because it was like he was right there.
Wow.
Like, it was. So I don't know, man. Like, I guess I would say that. I don't want to sound like some kind of yo-yo, but
no, that's incredible. I think that's really insightful.
I just posted a story the other day on my Facebook about my wife's dog. And you'll have to go watch it because it was the same situation. My wife lost her dog and he went disappearing. And I mean, like, this dog has made a connection with her and he saved our family's life because the propane stove got left on one day. And like, he woke us up at night to tell us, and all the other dogs were conked out sleeping, didn't care. And this dog was a rescue dog that she had rescued off the road. And like, just a crazy story with this dog. But I literally just posted it the other day. You have to go watch it. It's like a 12-minute thing. But same thing. We were coming home that night. The dog hadn't come back. And she was, I could tell it was really bothering her, and we had to go for a meeting somewhere and we couldn't be back till late that night. And we live in a very, very remote area of Ohio, like dirt roads, like just blocks, thousands of acres of timber around me. And I literally, when we turned the bottom of the hill and I had about a mile and a half to go to my house, I literally did one of the same prayers. And I was like, God, I know you can do this and I need you to do it because I know my wife isn't going to sleep tonight. Like, I just know it. And I said, I believe in you so much. I've seen the things you've done for me in the past and how you work. And I know you want good things for us. I know sometimes bad things happen in life, but you can always make good things come from them if we trust you. And I said, I have faith that you can do this. And I said, I want that dog standing in the middle of the road before the time we top this hill, because I don't want to have my wife go to sleep tonight without that dog. And there was 2 dogs missing. And when we turned up the hill, made the curve, we had about another 300 yards to go. And that dog and the other dog were sitting in the middle of the road, just sitting there waiting on us.
Jeez.
Dude, craziest thing. Like, it was like, my wife's like, oh, there they are. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, she didn't know I was praying when we were driving. She didn't know that. Like, she had no clue. And
Wow.
I mean, dude, it was wow. Like, I don't know. I've just had those experiences that there's just no way that it's not real. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just not. There's
Chills.
just no way.
Chills.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's just, I've had too many of those experiences in my life that I know, you know what I mean? And I truly believe I do believe that he will shine favor, or, in people's situations that truly have that kind of faith,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
So maybe the answer to my next question I was going to ask you, maybe you just answered it. Maybe the answer is prayer. But I was going to ask you, what's your very most important habit? Like, what's that thing in your life that either just helps you live and achieve daily life in a good way, or specifically hunting success? But what's one thing that you do over and over and over that really makes a difference for you?
I pray for wisdom and understanding. Yep, I do. Like, I pray for that a lot. Like, I pray for wisdom, and that's more or less come in my older age. You know what I mean? Like, and I still fail. We all, like, I'm not, but and I sometimes still put deer first. Which I shouldn't, or I put money first, or God. God comes second or third sometimes in our days, but truly He should be first. But I've really come around to the scripture that talks about blessed is the man who finds happy is the man who finds wisdom and gains understanding and seeks it.
Yeah.
And I'll be truthful, like, that has saved me from so many bad decisions later in life, like business decisions, or I want to make people understand or listen to this, like, if they're still with us here, because sometimes when you start talking about God, it drives people away. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I've always taken that chance with my show. Like, that's one thing I've always prayed about with my show, Whitetail Edge, is that God will use my platform for me to be able to spread His kingdom to a degree, or the good news. But I hope, like, these stories and my experiences can maybe, like, help people and be like, wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not giving some cockamamie story of, like, I healed the demon out of that. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not those kinds of things. It's
Yeah.
just basically having that connection, if you so you will. And I never pray for, like, God, can I have this big deer? I'm going hunting today, Lord, and I want you to put that buck right in my lap. Like, I don't ask for those things. Like, I boldly asked for that dog to be in the road the other day. Like, that's as bold as I've ever really asked for anything in prayer. Typically, I don't pray like that. But, like, I don't know if you'd say I was somewhat, like, testing. I wasn't really testing, because you're not supposed to test God. But I truly had so much faith. I was like, I know He can do it. I know He can. Like, and I'm just like, why not? Like, God, I just want that dog to be sitting in the middle of the road to make our life easier tonight. And she'll sleep and she'll be happy. And
Yeah.
that dog is, whatever. And bam, there he was. So, like, I guess that's just, but, like, praying for wisdom and understanding has been a huge change in my life, as far as, like, when it comes to decisions and being able to discern things or walk away from things. Or, like, have you ever had, say, like, with what you do, trying to get sponsors or certain business dealings? I mean, have you ever had those instances where you're like, man, this just isn't coming together, and you're kind of pushing hard on it, and you're like, I don't understand this, and, like, you're kind of
Sure.
getting upset. And then it just doesn't work out. And you're just like, man. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, that company's out of business.
Yeah.
Or they're not paying their bills, or something else happened, or it's just the simplest thing of like, maybe your car gave you car trouble that morning, or there was a tree across the road and you had to go another direction. But yet, what you didn't realize is that maybe God was sparing you from a horrible accident that you were going to drive into on the freeway if you'd have went that way, or anything. Like, I think we always just kind of have to have that awareness of, and it's just same with me. Like, if I don't kill a certain deer, if I don't have a successful hunt, I have to, like last year I went to Kansas, first year in my life I've ever hunted Kansas and didn't kill a buck. Hunted 10 days as hard as I've ever hunted. Never killed a deer. Didn't even have a shooter within shooting distance except one day, and he came in on the wrong side of the tree downwind, and I didn't have a shot. I mean, it was hard to accept. And I lost my cool a time or two, and and I think God was like showing me, like, look, dude, it's not all going to be like, you've had so much great success in your life. Like, you're going to have to learn to live with some failure at times.
Yeah, those are important lessons too. Very true.
So so that humbled me a bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I hope that answers the right way, but definitely coming to God about a lot of things in your life is something that I try to do a lot. I'm just seeing His hand in too many things for me not to try to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I fail at doing it, when I should be doing it more, but I think that's just human nature.
Yes, we are all imperfect. That is for sure. And that's actually a perfect segue into the next area I wanted to explore, which was a few more of our imperfections here. I'm curious if you can point to what your most common hunting related mistake is. Like, what's the thing that you continue to struggle with? You've been doing this for decades. You're one of the very best at it, but there's got to be something that you continue having speed bumps with, or something that every once in a while trips you up. Can you point to what that thing is?
Yeah, I'll be honest, dude. Like, I have always struggled with scent control. Like, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if my body gives off a certain odor. Like, I'm a heavy sweater. Like, I really am. Like, I sweat a lot. Um, and I don't know if that's what it is, but I mean, it seems like I can just do everything possible. What I feel is, and sometimes I beat them and sometimes I don't. But I would say that's the one thing that like really irritates me on certain days, that, a deer gets you or a doe gets you, or, and man, that just drives me nuts, because it's like, and I think there's certain clothing fabrics, certain things that all contribute to that. Like, they hold scent differently, or, and it's something I want to dive deeper into as I get older. And I've used a lot of different clothing and like carbon. I've tried ozone, everything. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Again, one of the things that has probably helped me the most is going back to using like the Black Widow deer lure. When I start getting deer downwind of me now, I start spraying that deer urine in the air to just try to calm them down. And that has helped me tremendously. And you'll see it in a lot of my videos that I do that. It's really helped a lot, because I don't think that like my scent is that bad, or like because my practice is like anybody else's that truly takes it. I'm washing the right way, I'm using the right stuff, I'm keeping them clean, putting them in containers. It's just something, and I don't know if it can be your breath. Nobody's ever told me I had bad breath, but I don't know what it is. Could be, I think just your body gives off an odor. To deer, we stink. Like, we just stink. Humans just stink and reek to deer. Like, you can literally lay a gas can in the middle of the woods and they'll walk right by it and don't care about it. Like, and we're worried about getting gas on our clothes. They don't care about that. They don't care about cigarette smoke so much, I don't think. There's just certain things that don't trigger them. I mean, like the Wenzels smoke their clothes, literally stand in a fire pit of leaves and smoke themselves before they go hunting, like the Indians used to. So it's just, I don't know. it's just, that's one thing that's probably really tripped me up a lot over the years. Sometimes I really get it right and I'm doing good, but then there's times that like, it just seems like I can't get it right, and it irritates me.
Yeah, I get it. I've been there too. So then my question is, what's your process for getting better at something or dealing with a struggle? And I guess you could use the example you just described, that being scent control, or anything else. The biggest thing I'm trying to understand is, when you've got a struggle, when you have a thing that you are having trouble with or haven't mastered yet, how do you tackle that?
Yeah. Well, for one, I am not afraid to gain information from other people. Like, I truly believe that, like, if you quit asking questions, or you think you get to the point where you can't learn anymore, you're in trouble.
So true.
And I can learn off fans. I can learn off anybody. I mean, just because I have a deer hunting show does not mean I know everything. You know what I mean? Like, by any means. And there's good old rednecks out there that probably are using certain tactics that I'll never know about, that would probably be game changers. So whenever I have a chance to learn from somebody, especially somebody that's had some really good success at killing mature deer or being successful at something, could be anything that you're trying to accomplish, I feel like it deserves a listen, and don't be so arrogant to the fact that you feel like you can't, oh, I don't want to listen to that guy because I don't like him. You still might pick up something, you know?
So true. I'm right there with you on that one.
Yeah. And I imagine, like, in the circle you run now, like, watching you grow in the industry over the years has been really incredible, and what a blessing. But I'm sure you've learned a lot of different things by being around the people you're around, and the camps you get to visit, and guides that you see, or just anything, people you interview. Sure, there's things you've
100%.
picked up.
I can't say everything, but a whole lot of what I've gotten here now is from situations like that. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, we all got to start somewhere and learn. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just same with deer hunting. I didn't just pick up a bow and go out in the woods and start whacking bucks. You have to learn you start somewhere with somebody telling you. Sometimes it's not always great information, but then you take some of that information, you start breaking it down and using it. And, it could be something from trapping or this or that, and you start using that woodsmanship. And I believe that's something as a whole in the hunting industry that we're really losing, is woodsmanship, especially in our younger hunters.
Yeah.
Is that, sometimes it takes a while to be successful working for it. Especially in states like Ohio, or in Kentucky, and places where baiting is a huge way of deer hunting, or like Texas and things like that. Like, I think a lot of our younger generation is, and I'm not saying that that's completely wrong, because, we need hunters, and I'm not trying to pit and say that, but what I'm getting at is that, like, I think it's harder for the younger generation that grows up hunting that way, like, hunting over a bait pile or something like that. They don't learn the art of scouting a rub line, or a scrape line, or a bedding area, or why does this deer move from point A to point B on certain days, or like, that's the fun part of hunting. Now, maybe as they get older, they'll get tired of hunting that way and they'll want to learn something different and go do it. But, I just, kind of got off on a little weird thing there. But I'm just saying, like, I just feel like we all can learn. And I mean, I've learned things about deer watching how they react to feeders or bait piles, or I've learned things about deer that way. So I think you can learn something from every situation and use it to your advantage somewhere along the line.
Yeah. Never stop learning. Now, you mentioned something. You mentioned there the importance of putting in the work, right? And I think that's a pretty consistent thing. You talk to anyone who's consistently successful deer hunting, they will note you got to work hard, right? But we rarely hear from those people what they mean when they say, I work hard, or you have to work hard. So I'm curious, Ben, how do you define hard work? Like, what does hard work for deer hunting actually look like in your practice?
Well, and I'm ashamed to say this to a degree, but like, it never leaves your brain. It just doesn't. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I'm just going to be truthful. Like, if there was an idol in my life, it would be big deer. There's just no ands, ifs, or buts about it. Like, over money, over everything. They consume me. Like, I tell people, if I read the Bible and tried to be as good of a saint or a disciple as, I could be, and if I put that amount of time into that as I did thinking about deer or strategizing, I would glow.
Yeah.
Like I would break
Probably
every
be a
light
lot
bulb
of
in the room.
there'd probably be a lot of saintly whitetail hunters if they could
Yeah, that's what I'm
divert that
saying. So
passion.
it's like, but like I tell this to a lot of people, like I don't play baseball, I don't golf, I don't play softball on the weekends with my buddies. I don't ride four-wheelers for fun. I have them, but they're not for ATVing. You know, like I have just honestly, Mark, like I have been so serious about big whitetails that like I just can't even explain that to some people, like really how I look at it. And um it's just really how it is. And I mean it can be a detriment to a degree, like I
Sure.
remember when my kids were little, we'd go on camping trips, we had campers and I get off work from logging for the week or whatever, and we'd take the camper and go to somewhere like West Branch Reservoir in Ohio and go camping. And I'd always take the deer hunting magazines with me, and my wife finally one day said, I want you to be present when you're with us. Like it's not. And so I had to, and I find myself as I get older, I'm way easier to do that now. But when I was younger, I had to really catch myself because I
Mm-hmm.
was taking precious time away. And one thing I do think I did too was like, because I've always filmed since my kids were little. And I think that put some pressure on my kids that maybe has somewhat pushed them away from hunting. Maybe not so much pushed them away, but it's more of a thing of like, I don't know how you'd say, like maybe being in the shadow of somebody that has a reputation, like being like, say for instance, like Hank Williams Jr. always felt like he had something to prove because
Yeah.
Hank Williams
Yeah.
Sr. was his daddy.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if that could maybe relate to some of my boys. Like, they like to hunt and, but they don't care about filming. They don't want that camera around for the most part. And that's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, I just want them to hunt and enjoy, being out there. But I'm just saying, like, we can take it too far. We can, and, and so I guess when you ask, like, how much, like, what is work considered to me, but like, I probably work harder than the average guy in general just at what I do daily through my life, and I have a lot of these people that say, man, boy, you're so lucky. You have a deer hunting show, you got a nice truck and you own land and, nice house. And man, it must be nice to be that lucky all the time. And, and the thing is it's like, I tell them like, yeah, well, the funny thing is the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the harder I work at killing big deer, the more I kill. Like it's just, I don't know. So I guess it's just priorities, what your goals are.
Yeah.
And I think biggest thing is hunt smarter, not harder. Working to put yourself in those positions, you have to work hard. But when it comes to the actual hunting side of things and being in that deer's territory, you have to be smart how you hunt. And typically, if you've done your homework and you know enough about that deer, you should kill him the first or second, third sit.
So tagging on to that, then that hunting smarter versus necessarily always harder. Ideally both, but I get what you're saying. Something that I'm really interested in, probably because I find myself, I don't know if I want to say struggle, but it's always a big part of my hunt, is the decision-making process before heading out. I'm curious about what your decision-making process looks like when you are deciding where you're going to hunt on a given day or morning or evening. There's all these different variables that might be going through your mind. What does that look like for you? Like I'm very curious.
Torture.
Like, yeah. Okay.
Torture.
Tell me more
Plain
about
torture. Because I'll be honest, like I'll be truthful, Mark. Like sometimes, because people think like guys like me probably have it all figured out, and I know from the second I wake up where I'm going to be that day. Now there has been those times, like I know this is what I got to do, but then there's times that just like Ranger last year, I didn't have enough information, and he was just giving me sprinkles of info, and so I had to go with my gut. I had to dig deep and be like, okay, this is what I've seen that he's done. in the past. This is what little bit of information I have from the cameras this year, because I can't be there to scout. I can't be there to watch. A lot of like where he was at, I couldn't even see. You couldn't see from a road if you wanted to. You couldn't glass. You couldn't. And so I had to take all those little bits of information and try to put them in I don't know how you say it, just a package, and then like break it down. Like, okay, let's try this, and then feel good about it. So sometimes my decision sometimes isn't even made until I start the walk in. Like, it's been that crazy at times. And sometimes I've changed my walk in and went somewhere else. Yeah. It can be a torture in a man's brain like myself.
Yeah.
But
is there anything over the years that's helped you deal with that struggle? Because I'm in the same boat. It's torture for me too. I'm analyzing 1,000 different things, all these different ideas. And I've slowly gotten better, maybe, but I'm curious if there's been anything over time that's helped you better make sense of that, or better filter all these different inputs.
Well, so this is something, and I kind of say this sometimes, and I say this lightly. I don't say this in but really a deer is just a goat with horns. Like, try to dumb it down a bit. Yeah. Big deer are just really good at surviving, and I think every situation depends on where you're hunting. Like if you're hunting extremely pressured deer on public land, well, then you're hunting deer that are going to move very minimal in daylight. So you need to be as close to them as you can possibly be when they do move in daylight. Mm-hmm. Does that mean you get in there an hour before dark in the morning, or before daylight, and you sit there all day waiting for that 15 minutes of daylight at the end of the day? That's what you got to do. Even though he's going to enter the bedding area from another way, but there's no other way to get in there except from the cover of darkness from the back door in the morning, and wait for him to come out that side in the evening. Stuff like that. That's what separates the killers from the hunters. Extremism. There's just so many little things that I don't know. Just a lot of that. But deer I consider it to be 3 basic needs. They need to eat, they need to drink, and they need to have sex. That's breeding. Those are the 3 things. They're a lot like a man. Mm-hmm. Just seriously, like, break it down. Like, yep. Those 3 things next to having to breathe air are their life. And a lot of people don't put enough emphasis on the water situation, especially in early season. But that's really kind of how you need to break it down. And like, you take those things and then you start thinking about, okay, well, if this deer moves tonight, he probably got a drink there. If I'm sitting here, I can catch him going to that food plot or that clover field or old man Johnson's cornfield, or no, it's this time of year, he's going to be looking for Nellies over there in Don's hayfield. There's just simple things. Like, I shouldn't say they're simple, but October green, November grain, November, December grain, except for certain days, then they want to hit green. And like, it's just really hard to put it at any one thing. You just kind of have to know that particular situation and ask yourself those questions, and sometimes I truly believe less is best. Like, putting the, I guess, least amount of, a lot of effort, but a least amount of thinking about deer, like, going in to try to manage a property. Sometimes you can take a property that's always had big bucks on it for years, and then you finally get a crack at it, and you think you're going to go in there and, put all these food plots in and do all this crazy management, and all you do is drive the deer out.
Right.
So, like, I think sometimes every situation is different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth. You've talked about hard work. You've talked about kind of having a certain sense of like extremism, like you're willing to take things that to the next level that maybe the average person isn't. Talked about your decision-making process. I think something that probably is consistent across all of that, you haven't said these words yet, but I think it's kind of underneath the surface, is mental toughness. Can you speak to how mental toughness factors into your hunting success, if at all? And then also, like, how do you define mental toughness? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, so it's really odd. Like, I can barely sit my butt in front of a TV for more than 15, 20 minutes unless it's really something I'm interested in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I can sit in a deer stand waiting on a buck for 9 hours, and not get bored. Like, I don't know. I guess it's in that mental game, but then there can be times, and I'll be honest, like, there's times, especially late season, like if you're somewhere trying to grind it out in December after a lot of the gun seasons and archery's been in for a long time, and you're trying to get the dupe on a big, a mature deer, not just a deer, but a mature deer, and deer movement in general is at a very low. Like the rut's over, could be a sprinkling of second rut, here and there, but you're generally hunting deer that are just scared to death. That is a grind on a person's mind.
Yeah.
Like, because you're not seeing a lot of movement. I mean, even I can struggle at those points, especially if you don't have the info you really need, like, and you're not on something particular. Like,
Yeah.
if you're like last year, I went to Iowa for a little bit for just a couple days in December, right after Christmas. I'm like, I'm going to try it. I need to try to get this tag filled. Went to a spot, didn't, had a little bit of intel, but not much. And the deer just, they weren't moving. They were scared to death. Everything made a noise everywhere you stepped. Like, they could hear you. Like, you'd take 3 steps into the area to try to get into a cedar thicket or somewhere to go, and the whole hillside would bust out with deer. And you're like, ah, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Nightmare.
those days can really eat at you.
Yeah.
And so, but then again, I think there's times where you just finally say, you know what? I've had enough. I've had a good season. It's time to pack up and go home. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, I think you can't take the fun out of it. And if it starts getting to a point where it's making you moody and angry, and, I think that's when we got to check ourselves.
Well, what do you do though? And maybe what you just said is what you do sometimes, but what do you do when you find yourself in that kind of situation where you're exhausted, frustrated, stumped, trying to figure out a hunt or something? Like, when you find yourself in those, like, lowest of low moments as a deer hunter, how do you fight back? Like, how do you get through that? What do you have some practices?
One thing is don't be filling your mind with social media and watching where other people are having success
So
or negativity
true.
or negativity, because you can really
Yeah.
beat yourself up quick. You know, try to stay in a positive mindset, eat good, try to, don't be eating tons of sugar and stuff that's going to make you feel like crap through the day, because like that gives you those increases of dopamine, but then big letdowns and you don't handle mood swings right. Um, being comfortable when you're hunting in those situations, like if you're cold, you're not going to last. Like, you need to do everything for yourself, I guess, self-care in a sense, to be able to withstand those boring moments. But you always have to have on the back of your mind that it could happen at any second, because that's a lot of times how it happens. I mean, you can just be sitting there through the most bored 5 days of your life, and then within 15 seconds, it's over, and you just shot a 180.
Or you weren't
Like, it can just
focused
happen that way.
and it disappeared.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I don't know. Like, it is tough. It's a very tough thing, and it's really, I don't think it's anything you can just teach people. It's like you either got it in you or you don't. Sometimes, some days I have it in me, and some days I don't have it in me, and I just go home. you know, I used to
Yeah.
have it in me a lot more when I was younger, but I don't hate them as much as I used to. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Well, you make a really good point though. This thing is supposed to be fun, right? And that's a lesson I've had to learn the last 3, 4, 5 years. And as I got back to the fun of it and just getting back to why I got into this thing in the first place, interestingly enough, as my stress levels went down, my success went up.
Yeah. Yep.
So
It can easily do that. And that's where I think that's what I worry a lot about the younger generation now is like, they're so focused on what people like I am doing or other like the hunting public or people like that they really look up to. You know, most of the young guys don't look up to me. They're looking up to people like that because, you know, I'm kind of the old school and they're maybe hunting somewhat differently, but um, you comparing yourself like that and trying to live that life doesn't help your life.
yeah.
You know, and like it's really disheartening at times when I'm doing seminars or I'm at a sporting goods show, you know, and some 15 or, you know, 14-year-old kid comes up to me and he's been like, and I've said this on numerous podcasts, and he starts showing me pictures, you know, oh, I passed this 3.5-year-old 145 or 150 up, you know, I was hunting this deer, but I didn't get him. I'm thinking, dude, you know, and I tell him like, man, when I was your age, that 115 that you passed back a couple pictures earlier that was with that 125 would have been dead.
Yeah. And you would have
Like,
been
just kill
pumped.
some stuff, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
kill it. Just kill some stuff. Have fun. Like, learn to kill. Like, and, you know, taste the blood. Like, the success, the fun of it, you know, the big stuff, the mature, that'll come later. Like, it isn't just about killing really big deer, you know? And I mean, when I killed my first booner, I had already killed probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 decent bucks with my bow. So I was ready to take a step.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like another step. And then that just elevated that step, you know? And so I think that's something that, you know, people need to be aware of too.
Yeah. I think there's the old line, or it's something like this, that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Hunt your own hunt. Don't worry about everybody else.
Yeah.
All right. I've got a final few questions I want to run you through, but kind of rapid fire. So we're going to hit these quick answers. First thing that comes to your mind. What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your hunting success or enjoyment?
$100 or less.
Yeah.
Probably trail cameras, like regular trail cameras back in the day when, you know, and there's still some today that are under $100, but you know, when they first came out, you know, there was some cheaper ones that a working class guy could afford that were right around $100.
Yep.
And, you know, trail camera, let's not kid ourselves. And I know I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm the greatest deer hunter in the world, but there is no doubt about it that trail cameras have changed the game, even for myself. Like, I've used that information to no end. You know, so I know I wouldn't have as many big deer on the wall as I do if it wasn't for trail cameras.
Yeah.
Just
they're hard to argue with that.
Yeah. I mean, it just is. It's the facts. You know, even the regular SD cards and cell cams have just taken it to another level.
Yeah.
You know.
So the next one here is kind of related. If you had to give up all of your high-end hunting gear, right? Your really nice bow, your really nice camo, your nice trail cameras, your nice optics, all the good stuff, your stands, you had to get rid of all of it and replace it with entry-level products. Like you had to go to Walmart and replace everything with just like the budget stuff, except for one category. You could keep like one high-end thing, like your high-end bow or your high-end whatever. What would be the one thing that you would spend the extra premium dollars to keep that one high-end thing, and why?
I would probably say, man, that's a tough one because like there's so many different things that you could pick there, but I feel like it would be hard to give up a trail camera because, like, I mean, I feel like bows in general or whatever, you know, there's, you know, I used to kill deer with, you know, bare whitetail 200s when I was a kid, you know, with fat, giant aluminum arrows with, you know, horrible broadheads. But the trail camera for me, I guess, is hard because it allows me to scout so many different deer in so many areas in so many states at once.
Yeah.
That would be very hard for me to give up because because it helps your hunts. It helps you not waste time. And I hate wasting time. To where like when you first get to a place years ago, you'd have to start scouting, you'd watch from afar. And I still do that at times. Like, so giving up a trail camera would be tough. And I know some people may say, oh, that's a cop out, but it just is. It'd be tough because I've gotten so used to being able to put information together. Like you still got to know where those big deer are. You still have to kill them. You still have to. It's not like I watch my phone and be like, oh, you just walked past camera number 2. I'm going to run to camera number 3 and sit there. I don't do that. Like I don't use them for that. I love taking information that I've learned from a certain deer and how they do things and when they do it, and from weather patterns to just, I love that. I enjoy that part of it. I love watching them come into a food plot I planted. Mock scrapes I've made, watching them work those scrapes. I love messing with deer that are camera shy and hiding cameras from them and getting them from a different angle. And they think they got away with it and they didn't, and I got them. So like, I don't know. I just really love trail cameras.
Yeah. You're not alone. You're definitely not alone in that. How about this one? If one of your best hunting buddies was sitting here with us today, or someone who's spent a lot of time with you, maybe a camera guy, someone who's been with you a lot hunting, who's seen you through your ups and downs, who's observed you, who's heard you talk about this stuff a lot. If they were here with us and I asked them to point to your single greatest strength as a deer hunter, what do you think that they would call out as your greatest strength as a deer hunter?
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm at one of my best friend's house. We should call him down here and ask him to see just see if it'd be funny. Like,
get the honest truth of the matter.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome to ask him if you want.
Yeah. I don't know. Hold on. Let me see if I get him. Hey, Lamar. This will be an interesting thing. Cause like, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Cause I don't know what people think of me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's sometimes a friend will say the thing that deep in your heart, to be true, but maybe you have never like said it out loud.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's kind of an interesting thing.
I mean, I think I kind of have an idea that somebody may say, well, Ben is very persistent, or just focused on a big deer, something like that. But I'm curious, myself as to what somebody would say. All right, here's Lamar. Come on over here, buddy. So he asked me this question. I was like, well, I don't know. So like I said, I'm at one of my friends' place, so let's ask him.
All right, we're gonna put you on the spot here, Lamar. So what I was asking Ben was, if one of his best hunting buddies was here with us today, which now you are, my question is, what would you say is Ben's greatest strength as a deer hunter?
I mean, like from my perspective, like Ben almost has like this thing as a deer hunter. Like Ben finds a deer, Ben will like high percentage he'll kill that deer. He just has this instinct about deer and what they're doing. That if Ben finds him, Ben's hardest part is finding a deer he wants to kill. Like he's like this scavenger that's looking for the deer he wants to kill. So I go out there and it's like, yeah, that thing's 5.5. I'm gonna shoot him. And Ben's still looking for one. But when Ben finds one, it's like, I mean, the odds are against that deer. Like I've seen him do it. I haven't known Ben for terrible many years, but I've seen him do it with deer that I knew he wanted to kill. And usually it's not very long. I get a picture. Once he's on that deer, he'll tell you, I'm on that deer. And so it usually doesn't take very long. So he's got an uncanny, just a sixth sense about, what deer are doing. And it's a gift, really.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can totally teach what Ben's got in that sense.
So it's that sixth sense, it's that deep understanding of deer, and that then becomes like instinct probably. Now I got to ask you, and Ben maybe didn't know this was coming, but what's the other side of it? So what's Ben's greatest weakness as a deer hunter, or his greatest area for improvement? You're on the outside looking in. It's a lot easier to identify those weak spots from the outside. What do you think? What do you think that might be?
Probably his biggest one of it. This may not even be related to killing deer, but one of his biggest weaknesses is taking his cameraman with him in the tree.
That is a challenge.
I'm a Lone Ranger.
So
he calls me Tonto.
Yeah, no, I don't really know. I don't really know exactly how to answer that. I mean, are you specifically rated, like talking about specifically killing deer, or just like as a deer hunter or land manager?
It could be really any one of those things. I mean,
I'll tell you one thing I'm really bad about is when it's that time of year, I don't want to talk to anybody. Don't, and I like I'm
Yeah,
I'm not a very social.
Yeah, the social part, he's kind of like a buck, after they get done bacheloring up or whatever in a certain time, like he's just not hanging out.
When I shed my velvet, I'm disappearing.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's weird. Like I will say this, because like me and Lamar have some ground in the same area, and we get to spend time together in the evenings, staying in a cabin together and stuff at times. I do enjoy that more, but like I don't go out to eat very seldom, like in the evenings. I don't like I'm focused to a point of almost like to a fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I would probably say that could actually be something. Like I think that, like, for me, I enjoy camp. I like the camaraderie. I like the experience, and like I don't know if you can get Ben to dial back and start enjoying those things more or not, but that would probably be one area that I think Ben could probably,
I could use some improvement.
Yeah.
It's hard for me because like I've always looked at it like this, because even from a young age, traveling and hunting, I was taking time from my wife, taking time from my kids to go do what I wanted to do. The filming only came into play because I looked at it as a way that I didn't have to spend that money to buy a bow or clothes or things back when I started with the Drury's. And they paid us a little bit of money. And so that was a win for me. Like I didn't have to take from my family. And so to me, it was a job. Like, because for one, Mark and Terry were counting on me to kill some deer and on film. And I took that serious. And so I think where I've struggled is whenever I'm out of state, and especially now that I have my own show and I have sponsors and a reputation, it's like I'm so focused on trying to be successful that sometimes I can make it not fun for myself. Like I was saying, that's where I said I have the experience of like, let's keep the fun in it. And sometimes I can take the fun out of it, but at the time I'm really having fun. I think, I'm just missing out on some of the things of visiting but I have gotten better. But definitely that could be something.
Yeah. Yeah. Lamar, you sound like some of my hunting buddies. I've heard the same feedback. and yeah, I'll let you get back to your life, Lamar. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. Good
all right,
chatting
Ben.
with you.
Yeah, you too. I got 3 fast questions. We'll do it in 3 minutes. All right. So what is one common mindset or trait that all the best deer hunters have in common?
They practice shooting.
What is one commonly held belief within the deer hunting world that you think is actually hogwash?
That deer work scrapes downwind. That they scent check scrapes downwind.
You don't think they do that?
No. I've never seen a big buck. I've never seen a big buck that I was after not go to the scrape that I wanted him to.
All right.
I've seen a lot of articles where guys talk about deer traveling
Yeah.
downwind of scrapes to smell. They want to work that scrape. They do.
Interesting. All right. This is it. Last one. If you were forced to distill the very most important idea about deer hunting, the best piece of advice you could give about deer hunting for folks, if you could distill it down to like one phrase that you could put up like on a giant billboard on the side of the highway, like on the way to Bass Pro Shops or something, where every deer hunter is going to drive by it on their way there, and there's going to be a big old billboard on the side of the road, and you can put one idea on that billboard that you would want these folks to be able to read. Your final parting words of most important deer hunting advice. What would that be?
Well, when it comes to the actual part of deer hunting, like tactical, it truly is the hunt smarter, not harder. It truly is. It's using that, because you can sometimes just do too much, and you're pushing those deer off. Pressure is key no matter where you're hunting. I don't care what kind of farm you're on, from public land to the most managed private land, whatever. Hunting smarter and not harder is, I think really the key.
I can't argue with you on that. Those are some
And if
wise
I
words.
was to put a billboard up on the side of the highway, I would say big deer are awesome, but Jesus is king.
There you go. I like that. Circle back to the important stuff. So thank you, Ben. Where do you want to send folks? For folks who listen to this, where can they see your content? Where can they watch the videos, the show, connect with you, whatever it is? What do folks need to know?
Well, whitetailedge.com is my website. Whitetail Edge TV is my channel on YouTube. We air on Masio Go channel. We Carbon TV. We have Instagram, Facebook. A lot of my tidbit information is on our social channels, like weekly stuff that we're doing and talking about, little bits of information. My YouTube channel is decent, but we typically don't upload our hunts until like the following July from the past season. Then they're edited and put up right about velvet time. So a lot of my info, day-to-day grinding info, is on our social channels. I know if I was to push my YouTube channel more and put more content on it, it would grow more. But I really didn't start my YouTube channel for money, to where some people really focus on that for the income. That's really not what I did it for, but it would be nice to see that channel grow more. But if people do subscribe to it, whenever we do upload stuff, they get a notice.
Awesome. All right. Well, from everything I've seen over the years, it is definitely worth doing. You've got some great stuff out there, great hunts, a lot to learn. And man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to do this and sharing so much knowledge across your platforms. A lot of people have learned from you. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And I feel like I've been truly blessed. I got a very, very fortunate the deer that I've been able to hunt and harvest over the years. And, I truly appreciate you having me on the podcast. I love this podcast, and truly it's been a joy to watch you grow in the industry and how big you've become. Geez, Mark, look at you. You're with the MeatEaters. Like, that was, whoever thought that was, you were going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, how cool.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate, very blessed. Like you said, I'm thankful for it, and just keep trying to do good stuff with it. Right. And
100%
help other folks. So, all right. Well, I'll let you and Lamar get back to your plans, and let's check back in again this hunt season.
Thanks, brother.
All right. And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you didn't hear our last episode with John Eberhardt, which kicked off this series, please go back and do so. And then be sure to tune in. We've got more of these coming down the line. I'll give you a little heads up, a little preview. Next week, I believe we'll be joined by Mr. Andre DeQuisto. So buckle up. It's going to be a good one. We're going to get another really interesting look into the mind of one of the best whitetail hunters out there, and I think you'll enjoy it. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you. And until next time, stay Wired to Hunt.